Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and some race reaction to the 2023 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Well, I don't know what you want me to say first off. I guess really it's more confirmation Azerbaijan relies heavily on accidents and red flags and safety cars to get it all exciting. It wasn't, by the way, there's some disagreement in chat. It was not. By far, it was not the worst race Formula One has ever put on. I'm going to be clear on that straight away. But it wasn't exactly an absolute thriller. I would rate it a little bit below average, maybe a 5. Some of you might go lower, some of you might go higher. It's all about opinions, of course. So let's try and keep it respectful, as we always try to on this channel, unless I go off on one, and then I tend to get a bit narky. You know what I'm like. But I hope you're all okay this Sunday afternoon in the UK or wherever you are in the world. Morning, evening. Good to see you all. Not a huge amount to get through. There was some good intrigue at the front, I will say that, and it looked like we might have a good fight, but I've come out of this weekend feeling a little bit deflated. I'm not going to sit here and feed you a load of BS just for clicks, and I think if you're a neutral Formula One fan, then you are heavily reliant on Sergio Perez taking his street circuit form onto proper racetracks, because it could end up being an absolute... I feel like Red Bull are going to win everything this season. It's just whether or not Sergio Perez can maintain this challenge. I hope he can. That's a conversation for a little bit later in the stream, though. I will kick off with a little bit of housekeeping. As always, if you are new to the stream, please do, or to the channel, please do subscribe. It would be great to have you on our journey this season. Drop a like as well, always appreciated. It helps me out in that battle with the pesky YouTube algorithm. You can support the channel as well through Streamlabs, Super Chats, PayPal, all of that lot. The only guaranteed way to get a question read out is through Super Chat, but I always come to you in chat, so it's no pressure on that. But all your support to keep the channel's head above water over the next few weeks is massively appreciated. I have got a little channel update later. If you tuned into the watch along yesterday, you'll know what that's about. I just want to run it past a few more people who tend to turn up to the race reactions, and I'm sure we'll talk about sprints as well. I'm ready for this. What are you saying in chat very quickly? See if anybody's 3 out of 10 for the one and only. Ooh, 3 out of 10. That is a low score. It's all about opinions. On that note, I've got somebody with me today. Good afternoon. Yes, it is. Wow, why did that take me a minute to work out? Good afternoon. Once again to Will. How are you doing, mate? How was that race for you?
Hello, everybody. I've woken up.
Just in time.
Yeah, it was, as I think you said at the start, not the worst race F1 has ever put on, but it also wasn't one that I think will go down in history as one of the greats. But I think there's still a lot to talk about and a lot to sink our teeth into.
Yeah. We're going to start. We will run through the order, of course we will. This might be a little bit shorter than usual. I'm not trying to be downbeat about F1, by the way, anybody. I just don't think it was the greatest thing we've ever seen. Sergio Perez, though, victory on a street track. I know, a rarity, never happens. Pretty decent yesterday as well in the sprint to get that victory. Overtook Leclerc on lap 6 to move up into second place, I think it was at that point, having had a decent start, staying third, but was in the mix after Max had taken the lead. He did then catch his teammate after Verstappen started sliding around a little bit, and then his race, I think probably the most significant point of the race, really, when you're talking about the victory. The safety car came out after Max Verstappen had pitted. Sergio Perez then got to pit under the safety car, which Crofty couldn't work out in all the years he's been doing F1 commentary, by the way. I'm sat there going, we're on about Crofty. Of course his works for Checo and not Max. But anyway, obviously lost less time. I think they said 11, 12 seconds. It cost you for a pit stop under safety car, and that gave him the lead. There was a note from the FIA about an unsafe release. They didn't investigate that in the end. But ultimately, his race today is decided by the safety car. That's to take nothing away from Sergio Perez. It's the way it goes. Sometimes it goes for you. Sometimes it goes against you. The only thing I would say to those who say he only won because of the safety car, yes, Max Verstappen was sliding on his tyres, but he had got that gap down to well under a second before Verstappen pitted. So he had, I guess my point is, Will, safety car or not, I think we would still have seen a great fight between those two, because I think Checo very much had the pace. You could say the beating of Max, but at least the matching of. I mean, he beat him, didn't he? So that's a stupid statement. He did beat him. So he definitely had the beating of him. You know what I mean?
No, I completely agree. I think even before the safety car, as you said, Perez was beginning to close that gap in, and I think he had got to under a second when De Vries hit the wall. So he just had the pace, and I think they were saying on the Sky Sports broadcast, again, this is nothing to take away from Checo's performance. I don't think Verstappen was firing at all cylinders this weekend. I have a feeling that there was something going on in the background, and he just wasn't quite fully focused on the matter at hand. But Perez drove really, really well, dominated the sprint, and really just had the measure of Max in the race as well after that safety car. So really, really impressive. And I know the conversation will now turn to, oh, well, maybe we can fight for the championship. And again, next weekend they'll bin it in the wall in practice, and all the conversations will be, never mind. But you never know. And it's nice to see. It's nice to see someone coming across the line that isn't Verstappen, which will probably already get some hate in the comment section. But it's nice to see a little bit of difference. Somebody taking the fight to the Dutchman, and I guess we'll see whether he can take this momentum and bring it forward. But I'm a little bit skeptical on that.
It's like I said at the start, isn't it? You if you're in neutral, you need Checo to carry this form on at every street track, but also turn that form on at a track like Imola or Spain, somewhere like Canada. Well, Canada is a street track, but Austria and Silverstone, rather than just doing it on street tracks if you want to see a title fight. Otherwise, Max is just going to romp away with this, which would be fully deserved if he did it. But again, if you're in neutral, you want Checo to be up there. So 6 points behind. That table must be wrong that I've got up there. It must be 8 points behind. I wonder if I'll have a look at that table because I think that's wrong. Let me see what the official F1 website is saying, because I thought Checo was 6 behind Verstappen, but the official F1 thing hadn't up. No, it's updated again now. So it's actually I'll change those tables in a minute. So Verstappen 93 points, Checo 87. So it is 6 points. Apologies, they're wrong. I will sort those in a second, but you need him in the mix, and I hope that he can carry that on. And it's not just. I don't want this to be another season like we had with Hamilton versus Bottas, where Bottas would have a good race or two and everyone would be like, oh, Bottas 6.0 or whatever we got to in the end, and then it all tails away. I want Checo to be able to maintain the battle for the rest of the season, because as a fan, I want to see a championship fight, whether it's between two drivers from the same team or not, I don't care. But as a content creator, and you'll agree with this, Will, we really could do with a championship fight. We don't want this wrapped up by mid-season or we're all finished.
Yep, pretty much. Completely agree with you. I was doing my tax documents for last year, and I was just thinking, yeah, please, just somebody bring the fight to Red Bull. That would make my life so much more comfortable. But as I said, it remains to be seen, and whether Red Bull will allow a championship fight as well. I think that we've also got to call that into question. But you never know. What one can hope and one can pray. Do I think we're seeing Perez 16.0? No, I think, again, it comes down to a little bit of maybe Verstappen not firing on all cylinders as well. But again, it's nice to see someone else coming out on top and someone bringing the fight to Max. So long may it continue.
I'll update the tables as I talk. This is bold. This is so bold. I do not do multitasking at all. But we'll see how we go with this one. So Max Verstappen, I mean, it started well for him, didn't it? Because he sort of got off the line nicely. Looked pretty good, actually, but pretty even in some ways with Leclerc. Leclerc kept the lead, and then they went off and Max was quite close. I mean, the closing speed without DRS of that Red Bull is frightening, quite frankly. It looks like they've got the measure of everybody with that one. And then DRS came, took the lead. All looked pretty good. 1.1, 1.2 seconds clear at the end of lap 4 after he just passed Leclerc. Did clip the wall on lap 8 as well. Had a bit of sliding because his tyres were going off at the rear. Pitted at the end of lap 10. And then, of course, it was the safety car that really, really cost him there. Did drop him to third, but he managed to get back past Leclerc. At turn 3, I think, on the restart, the safety car restart for P2. There was some questioning about whether or not Red Bull could have waited to bring Max in and seen whether or not we needed a safety car for De Vries rather than just bring him in straight away. But what they've kind of said, and the engineers, they let it go during the race and said they felt that it was just a case of really bad timing, which is what it felt like, to be fair. It didn't feel because I think Christian Horner made the point. It looked like De Vries was going to reverse out of that situation, didn't it? It didn't look. He wasn't in the wall, so you sort of thought he's going to reverse out and keep going, but they weren't to know. So if he's struggling on his tyres, he's losing time to his teammate. It's right to bring him in, and with hindsight, it looks silly, but at the time, you can totally understand why they did it.
Yeah, I agree. It was just bad luck at the end of the day. I haven't got much more to comment, but besides what you said, I felt the exact same way. I saw De Vries sort of pointing towards the ball and think, oh, he's maybe just, forgotten how to turn it. It's De Vries, at the end of the day. I do find it slightly ironic that his first DNF of the season is on a street track after all his Formula E experience, but hey ho. Yeah, and just sort of on that instant, I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit later. It was just a little bit clumsy from De Vries all weekend. A little bit unimpressed with him, if I'm honest. And I know there've been some people calling into question his seat. It's too early for that, but not the best start of the season for the Dutchman in what is a difficult car.
Yeah, it's not the best car, and you can see why, again, on a kind of side note, why they're making changes there. But we'll get on to De Vries shortly. And yeah, one thing I will ask them, because like I say, Sky were kind of making this point as well, or Damon Hill was. What are you thinking was distracting or was playing on Max's mind this weekend? Because one thing that I heard was Damon Hill said something along the lines of, why does Verstappen keep talking about his future? Why does Verstappen keep talking about the sprints? And I thought, well, because you lot keep asking him. It's probably why he keeps talking about it. If you ask a driver a question, they're going to answer you with something. So that's probably why. But what do you think that is? Or is it just maybe one of those weekends where Perez was just had the edge ever so slightly? Because that's all it was. It was ever so slightly.
Yeah, I really don't know. It was such a strange one. Because, we've had 3 weeks off, so you'd think anything that he'd be dealing with, he can deal with in that space of time. But yeah, maybe if there's something, I don't know, maybe there is something going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. Max, I think, has always spoken quite openly about his future in the sport and that he doesn't necessarily want to drive past 28, though, again, I'll believe that when I see it. But yeah, he just seems in a very bad mood throughout the whole of the weekend. And I don't think it is just Perez being better, because I mean we look at what happened in the sprint and his clash with Russell and the way he reacted to that. I also love how he went all on saying, "Oh, George just loves making excuses," before listing off about 5 excuses himself as to that I had cold tires, he was on the outside.
Formula One driver, though, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, it 100% is. But yeah, it reminded me very much of 2018 Verstappen, who was always a bit hot-headed, and if he got sort of worked up, that would sit with him for a while, and he'd stew on it, and he'd make mistakes as a result of that. And I think even in the race today, we saw quite a few close calls where he was getting, maybe brushing the barriers more than he needed to at that stage of the race. And yeah, just sort of taking a lot of unnecessary risks given where he is in the championship. My guess is it's something that's off track that none of us know about, but something to keep an eye on, especially with only a week before the next round in Miami. See if that momentum from Perez can continue and whether this downturn from Verstappen carries over as well.
Yeah, and just actually on the outburst, as people are calling it yesterday, I'm not, and this is going to annoy a lot of people, but I'm not quite sure I understand the controversy behind all that, quite frankly. I mean, what was the Sky headline? It riled me up last night. Not even that much of a Verstappen fan, and it riled me up. Foul-mouthed Verstappen fumes at Russell after sprint collision. If you think dickhead is foul-mouthed, oh my God, the world is going to chew you up and spit you out. Goodness me. I wonder if there's any British bias in there at all. Nice to throw that somebody else's direction for a change. Yeah, no, I don't. I really don't think it was that big of a deal. I'd feel very differently if he'd walked up to George, threatened to bottle him, threatened his family and dropped the effing C-bomb or something like that. Then I'd sort of get people's anger, but I don't really understand why dickhead is such a big controversy. Passionate, angry, frustrated, adrenaline pumping right after a short race that he didn't really want to be in by the sounds of it. I can understand why he's got a bit peed off, and I feel like George Russell, as much as a lot of people like him, I feel like he probably knows how to wind people up in some ways as well. I'm not accusing him of anything. I just don't see it's that big of a deal, to be honest.
Yeah, it's all a psychological game, Formula One, isn't it? And I'm sure it was very much in George's plan to rile him up a little bit if he could and take advantage of it. So, yeah, I don't think there's a lot that needs to be made out of it, but I think it's more the overarching kind of slightly downturn Verstappen that we've seen this weekend. That's more what we need to be keeping an eye on, sort of going forwards and seeing if that continues. If it's a long term thing, then maybe there's something in it. But one outburst of dickhead, big deal,
Yeah.
grow up.
Yeah, I don't recall the foul-mouthed headline when Lewis Hamilton called Max Verstappen a dickhead. But anyway, let's not go back to 2018. Burning Shadow said, honestly, you English speakers are generally overly sensitive when it comes to swearing. I'm not. You should hear me when I'm not on stream. People complain to me about my language on stream sometimes. You should hear me when I'm not on it. I do not care. It's just language. They're just swear words, if you want to call them that. They really don't matter. They're just... It's not a big... If you've got kids, I get it, but even then, your kids are probably picking it up from, well, you, probably, but certainly the playground. Super quickly then, Will, before we roll on to Ferrari and Charles Leclerc and co, has this result changed your feelings about the World Championship? Do you think Perez is really in this? I know we've sort of touched on it, but for me, I still think Verstappen is solidly favourite, but I'd like to see Checo keep this going as long as possible, ideally to the last lap of Abu Dhabi.
Simple answer for you, no.
There you go. Nice and easy. Let's just leave it there. No reasons needed. I'm going to say this. You know what's got... You never know. Yeah, we sort of do. Charles Leclerc, P3 today. Ferrari on the podium. Celebrate. Or don't, whichever. Down to P3 by the start of lap 6. Really very much in a race of his own. I think he described it as the loneliest race, or most boring race ever for him in third place in the cool-down room. Was overtaken by both Red Bulls. Didn't really put up much of a fight. Certainly against Verstappen after he was passed after that. I don't blame him. There's not really a lot of point. Is there risking wasting your tyres or a collision or costing yourself time? You may as well just let them go because you're going to get beaten ultimately. Did jump Verstappen under the safety car 1, which turns out to be the only safety car, so under the safety car period. But Verstappen pretty much immediately passed at the restart. So I think Leclerc's had a really good weekend. It's great to see Ferrari. I mean, pole position for the sprint, if we're calling it pole position for the Grand Prix as well. Got himself on the podium. Given how difficult his start to the season has been and Ferrari's start to the season, that's a really good result. So I'm so happy to see him up there. Carlos Sainz, though, I don't know where his pace has been. Apparently he's not happy with the car. Might know what that is, and hopefully they can resolve that for Miami. Perhaps just a symptom of not having a lot of practice on Friday morning. But he was told on lap 35 from his engineer, happy with tyre life until the end, is about all the notes I've got for Sainz for the whole weekend, other than he was a long way off his teammate. Where was he? 45 seconds off the lead. So 23 seconds off Alonso, so he's 24 seconds off his teammate come the end of the race. That's quite a gap. He needs to sort that out pretty swiftly, because in what is looking like a very tight fight between Aston Martin, Mercedes and Ferrari for second in the constructors at the moment, or certainly that battle for top 3, they're going to need Sainz right there with Leclerc, just like Russell, generally speaking, tends to be right there with Hamilton, and Stroll's been working nicely with Alonso. They need Sainz on the pace there for me. I really want to see more, but happy for Leclerc and happy for Ferrari.
Yeah, I think in the grand scheme of things, this has to be taken away as a positive weekend for Ferrari. Given the last 7 days that they've had as well, and the last 7 days for Fred Vasseur, he needed a strong result. And I think if they didn't get a strong result here, we'd be really worried, given that this is a track that should have suited their car anyway, has suited their car a lot in the past. And it was great to see, I think it was FP1, Leclerc was within a 10th, which was amazing. Really, really good to see somebody else sort of taking the fight up to the front runners. And yeah, the pole surprised me. I was thinking, okay, yeah, Leclerc set an identical lap time the first set of runs, but here before Verstappen, turns on his party mode and goes about 3 minutes quicker than him. But yeah, I don't think we had much high hopes for the races. I think they knew and we knew that P3 was, unless something crazy happened, the highest they were going to finish. But they pulled that off with Leclerc, which was really, really good. On Sainz, he's got to really work out what's going on, because I don't think this is it's he says there's an issue with the car this weekend, but he's not been on Leclerc's pace all year. He's not really been on Leclerc's pace since Abu Dhabi 2021. Quite frankly, that was the last time I think I could have considered those two more or less equal. As soon as we've moved to these new generation of cars, there just seems to have been a much bigger divide between the Ferrari pair. And given what we saw in Formula 2 this weekend, Ollie Behrman, phenomenal weekend for him. Ferrari junior driver, where exactly do they place him next year? Because come on, he's got to be in Formula One next year. Is the way I see it. Someone's got to tap Sainz on the shoulder and say, mate, look behind you. There is a young gun coming for your seat, and they're not going to ditch Leclerc. You're the one at risk here. So, yeah, time I think running out for Sainz if he's not careful.
My counter to that is that Ferrari should actually keep hold of Sainz, because these Leclerc Mercedes rumours for not necessarily next year or 24, but for the next few years when Hamilton decides he's had enough, that they're quite strong rumours. And if you drop Sainz and you were to bring in I'm not sure Ollie Behrman will be ready yet, but if you were to bring in somebody young and they're not quite up to speed and you've lost Leclerc or you've let Sainz go and then Leclerc says, I'm off, I can't be doing this. And then you're sort of like, oh, crap, what do I do now? At least Carlos Sainz could be a team leader there. So, I mean, that's very early speculation, of course. We're very early in the season yet. But Carlos Sainz is a very good driver. I'll always defend him on that. But I've never been one of these that thinks he's better than Leclerc, is what you say. I think that's probably people trying to be a little bit clever on Twitter and things, but I did see a good comment actually that I wanted to read from Nick Surface. Hey Nick, says Leclerc drove perfectly all weekend, literally nothing more he or any racing god could have done. That's kind of how I read it with Leclerc. He was never going to beat the Red Bulls on race day. Great job in qualifying. I think he even said, didn't he, in his post-race interview, that he'd done everything that he could in the race ultimately. Lewis says Sainz is still ahead of Leclerc in the championship. Yes, he is. Russell beat Hamilton last year, but I still take Hamilton over Russell. So, I mean, that doesn't really, or rate Hamilton higher than Russell. So I wouldn't really read too much into where he is in the standings. I don't think we're talking about Behrman to F1 immediately. I think unless, correct me if I'm wrong, Will, I think the point Will's making is there's a lot of Ferrari juniors back there who are looking very good. Somebody needs to just remind Sainz, you need to perform because we have options for the future. He's got another year in his contract, I think, yet Sainz anyway. So, unless you did mean Behrman to F1 immediately, Will, like tomorrow, get him in there.
I don't mean tomorrow, but next year. If he can, obviously, okay, it is one good weekend, and I maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit early on that, but 2024, if there's a seat open at maybe, I don't know where they'd place him, to be honest. I'm not saying chuck him in Ferrari next year, but I don't know. I can give him a few more races if he can keep this momentum up, and we see what momentum does in Formula 2. Look at Dragovic last year. Look at the champions in recent years past. A double win like that does not come from many drivers. Even the likes of Russell and Norris, I don't think, managed it when they were in Formula 2. I think Leclerc is the last one from memory. There might have been one in between that did the double on a weekend. But it really shows that you've got it. And Behrman, I do think is a top class talent. So I'm not saying getting him in tomorrow, but end of the year looking into 2024, if he's not in the conversations about putting him in an F1 seat, I'd be surprised.
It sort of tells you everything about the race that we're talking about, the drive market at the end of 2024, doesn't it? Purple Zebra, hey Purple Zebra, says perfect apart from the crash. That's true. But you know what I'm like when I say perfect. I once said Alpine had a faultless weekend, and then chat were laughing so hard, I think they all passed out and listed the 30 different things Alpine had got wrong all weekend. But you know what I'm on about. Anyway, on the subject of Alpine and in this topic there, former drivers, or driver, Fernando Alonso, 4th place for Aston Martin, just missing out on the podium, only 8/10 behind Charles Leclerc in the end. So very much so close to getting that or keeping that podium run going. Today was a fine and prime example of an experienced racing driver thinking. constantly thinking. He was watching Hamilton in the early phase of the race, watching his tyres grain, said something along the lines of, "We'll get them." Overtook Sainz at turn 4 on a safety car restart with a really nice move in for P4. Really opportunistic, actually. And kept asking the team over the radio about Stroll and sending suggestions, asking the team to tell Stroll about his brake balance suggestion. When you consider the tow in qualifying as well, it's been great teamwork all weekend from Aston Martin. It was a race for Alonso, really, and he was doing it behind Leclerc, where he's sort of a couple of seconds off, manages tyres, manages his race, and then as soon as he's happy to start pushing, he starts to close that gap. It was around about a second off Leclerc by around lap 31 for P3, then fell back again and then came back towards the end of the race. So there is some genuine pace in that Aston Martin, as we know from the first few races, and we've seen a sort of different track this weekend to Australia, and they've continued to be in the mix. So I think he'll be disappointed, I'm sure, not to make it 4 podiums out of 4, but 4th place is a fantastic result for Alonso and Aston Martin. And 7th place for Lance Stroll. Not epic. But again, he said he wouldn't attack Alonso because they were both playing the same game. He overtook Russell at the safety car restart for P6. That was a nice move as well. Did tag the wall on the inside of turn 6, but the car was okay, and had a big snap and went wide at turn 16 on lap 19, which allowed Hamilton past for P6. So not a faultless weekend for Stroll, but I think overall, Aston Martin, the takeaway for me is brilliant teamwork from Fernando Alonso, who for many years we all talked about being massively toxic, clearly loves that team, clearly loves his teammate. They're working so well together, and they are maximising what they can, aren't they? I mean, it's nothing against Stroll, but in a relatively evenly matched car, to say a Ferrari or a Mercedes, I always feel like he's going to come out behind them. So 7th place is good for him, but Alonso, he just keeps doing it, Will. But I don't know why I'm even surprised after all these years, quite frankly.
No, I agree. I think Aston kind of shot themselves in the foot with all the DRS issues that they were having over Friday and then Saturday as well. And Friday, it's like, oh, well, that's a bit unfortunate. Saturday, when they claimed they fixed it, and then they still were struggling, that we're a bit like, we're losing the sympathy at this stage. But given their starting positions, I think they got the most out of the weekend. Alonso putting some amazing moves. The one on Sainz on the restart was ballsy, and it was brilliant. It was so well executed. Just shows that Alonso, he's just a timeless F1 driver. He just doesn't seem to age. In all honesty, he's still got that quick wit. What is he? Is he 41 now, or is he 40 still? I can't remember, but. For a driver in his 40s, he's doing a phenomenal job. And, really, really impressive. And the teamwork as well. The only thing I will say was I did find hilarious Alonso suggesting brake balance changes for Stroll. Then 2 laps later, Stroll goes completely wide at turn 16 and gives up the position to Hamilton. I'm sure that wasn't related, but also quite funny timing.
Thank you to Shantanu, who says that race had a few fun moves, especially for Stroll and Nando early on. Still, my condolences for now having to extract an hour of content from this. Thank you very much for your super chat. And thank you to Mike as well, who put one in earlier. Streamlabs has just updated. Says, only just about to start the race. I hear it was a good one. We'll catch you live next time unless I jump on when you're waffling away. Thank you so much to both of you for your super chats. If you want to pop a super chat in, feel free. I definitely read them out as long as they're not, dodgy. You know the sort of thing I mean. But I'll always come to you in chat for your comments, as you'll have seen already in the stream. So, you can support the channel. All of that down below. I've not got much to say about Aston. I'm amazed, actually, it's taken us half an hour to get to this point, to be honest, Will. Nothing against the teams we've talked about.
I'm the king of waffle. I'm just the king of waffle.
I think you'll find you're not. I'll show you. No, but I think great weekend for Aston Martin, largely. The DRS thing needs to be solved, especially with some of the tracks coming up. That long straight in Barcelona, for example, could be costly. There's a long run in Imola, isn't there, as well? And Miami has got a good long run. So they want to get that sorted, but hopefully it works in the race. So hopefully that is resolved now and they don't end up like Red Bull a few years ago, where every weekend or every other weekend they're having to make changes because it's playing up. But really, really good work from Aston Martin this weekend. I don't think this is going to take too long for the rest of the field, to be honest, but I'll see what we can do. Where are we up to? I sound dead negative. I'm not negative. I love Formula One. I'll watch it, whatever. So, I've certainly seen worse. Lewis Hamilton P6 for Mercedes. Yep, Mercedes. P6 for Lewis Hamilton and P8 for George Russell. Hamilton pitted for the first time on lap 9, just as Alonso had caught him, so maybe some tyre things going on there. Came out behind a train of De Vries, Ocon and Hulkenberg. You're going to hear a lot of Ocon and Hulkenberg in a moment through this little run-through for the rest of the field. I thought he'd made a mistake. I thought he was in trouble there, but managed to get back to 6th place. Was only 6/10 off Sainz as they went across the line at the end. So in the mix for P5, which is where he started, actually. So it's more or less where he would have ended up if he'd not maybe come out in traffic. But yeah, it was a safety car. Another one caught out with a safety car, really put him down to P10. So that cost him. Was overtaken by Russell under that safety car, but then got back. Really nice move, actually. Super good defense from Russell. Left just enough space. Hamilton snuck up the inside and took the position for P7 on lap 15 at turn 1 and took advantage of Stroll's turn 16 mistake for P6. George Russell, there was an interesting moment in the pit lane where Stroll was sort of slowly coming in. I don't want to say back him up because it sounds like he was up to no good, but slowly coming in to sort of give a bit of space as the Aston Martins tried to double stack, which was another great move from them this weekend. And Russell kind of snuck up the inside and overtook him before the speed limit line, which was perfectly legal. The stewards did have a look, no investigation, and then pitted for softs on lap 50 to go for fastest lap, which was a 1:43.370, and did it. Got the bonus point for fastest lap, so well done to him. But yeah, I think Mercedes, what were they? 1, 2, 3, fourth fastest team looking at the result. But I think it is very close, isn't it, between Ferrari and Aston Martin and Mercedes this year. So this could be something we see change weekend to weekend, because I would say, and most would probably agree, that Mercedes was second fastest in Australia and everyone thought they were back. And then this weekend they were a little bit off the pace. I think George Russell said after qualifying they didn't have the pace this weekend. So that's going to ebb and flow quite a lot this season, which I'm looking forward to. So even if Verstappen or Perez or whoever disappears with the championship, I think we're in for one hell of a fight between Aston, Mercedes and Ferrari this year. I'm quite looking forward to that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Ferrari were maybe a little bit further ahead. It was, I'd say, more between Mercedes and Aston for P3. But, you know, as you said, it changes every single weekend. And if that carries on, you know, part of me thinks Ferrari can still lock down P2 comfortably if they get their act together. But given the start of the year they've had, who knows? Who knows? And looking at how Mercedes over the last, if you look at last year, they really turned the wick up in the second half of the year. If they can do that, Aston were also very good at doing that in 2022. They started with what was arguably one of the slowest cars on the grid and finished the year as sort of middle of the midfield. If both of those teams can start to ramp up their pace in the second half of the season, then yeah, who knows? The fight for P2 could be really, really interesting. I think I can't remember who it was that was saying, you know, we'll consider third place the win from now on, and that will make F1 a lot more exciting. And if you do look at it from that perspective, it's quite a lot of fun. So hey, we'll see how we go. And you never know, we could even see someone move up and challenge Red Bull. There was a lot of surprise at the upgrades that Red Bull brought this weekend, given they've been dealing with those wind tunnel penalties. So if they are sort of by inference from that using up a lot of their wind tunnel allowance now, then perhaps it might hurt them in the second half of the year, and those teams can potentially catch up. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, thing is though, on current form, by the time we get to the second half of the year, the championship's going to be done anyway, isn't it? So, I mean, nearly double points clear, or no, more than double clear. Yeah, more than double clear of Aston Martin already after 4 races. I know it's a long way to go, but yeah, I mean, look, I can imagine a lot of people saying it's rubbish seeing one team winning. I can imagine there are a lot of very happy Red Bull fans, and I speak from experience. When Ferrari were dominating in the early 2000s, I loved every bloody race except for the ones that didn't win. So with Michael Schumacher, so yeah, it's all, what's the word I'm looking for? Relative, I suppose. yeah, I'm not going to dwell on each team. We've got loads I want to talk about with the sprint, and there'll be your questions as well. If we do miss anything, please do remind us later when we get to Q&A, and we'll talk about them. I'll keep an eye out for press releases, which seem to be slow coming through this weekend. Usually they're in by now, so it's a bit strange that they're taking a while, but I'll keep an eye out for them.
They've all fallen asleep, that's why.
Yeah, they'll wake up in a minute. Lando Norris, P9, Oscar Piastri, P11 for McLaren. Frustrating day for Lando. Caught up behind that DRS train I mentioned of Ocon and Nico Hülkenberg, who started in a pit lane, stuck the hards on and ran for forever. Could have easily gone to the end on them, I feel, but obviously rules, they've got to pit. But frustrated for Norris, took a while to get past. Eventually managed to do it on lap 45 at turn 7 on Hülkenberg after Hülkenberg made a bit of a mistake. Piastri, who's been unwell this weekend, I think he's done a really good job this weekend, especially with that in mind. Did have a slow stop with his first pit stop, so that probably cost him some issues on the left rear, and he was caught in that train, a little bit off that train, but he was still sort of part of it behind Ocon and Hülkenberg. He took 11th place, 2.5 seconds off Yuki Tsunoda in the end. So McLaren have bought a lot of upgrades. They seem to have a bit more pace this weekend, which is good. They reckon it's worth a couple of tenths. Oscar Piastri was ill, so I think he's done well to come through that. Lando Norris has had a good weekend, largely, apart from that bizarre situation in SQ3, and then starting on the softs in the sprint and it all falling apart from him. He's done everything he could, I feel like. The softs are a bad call, but as a driver, he's done about all he could, and I think had he been ahead of Hülkenberg, maybe he'd have been closer to Russell in 8th place, but really 9th was probably the absolute best he was going to get today without chaos, because I'm looking at the timing screens and it is very much Red Bull, big gap, Ferrari, Aston Martin, Mercedes, massive gap, everybody else. It's kind of where we're at. So I think 9th is probably what most of the midfield teams are fighting for anyway, most weekends without a bit of drama. So maximum he could have done today is, I guess, what I'm saying for Norris.
Yeah, I think he was also hurt out by the safety car, wasn't he? I think he'd pitted just before or a few laps before that had come out. So that kind of that kind of ruined his race from there on out, and the DRS train not really helping with that. Bit of a shame, really, because McLaren did seem to have a bit of an upturn in form. They did bring a fairly hefty set of upgrades, which, according to Norris before the race, seemed to work out, and I think they've even been confirmed as working, which was great. So good news for the team, especially after what hasn't been a brilliant start to the season for them. And we'll see what happens in Imola in Miami next week. I'm trying to think back. I have a feeling it was an all right race for them, I think, before obviously Norris hit Gasly or had that accident in the closing stages. So yeah, I think you've got to still see this as a positive weekend for McLaren and a good step forward, and hopefully they can use it as a springboard for the next few races.
Well, it is positive, really, because they're 5th, which is probably realistically what they're fighting for this year, because the top 4 are just too far clear, and they're on 14 points and Alpine 8, and they didn't score anything this weekend. So Haas on 7, I didn't realise that, and Alfa on 6. Goodness me, that could be quite a fun fight as well. But yeah, I think McLaren will be happy with the weekend, and again, because nobody at the top retired, that is all they were going to get from it, really, unless safety cars, red flags, that sort of thing. So I think they could be happy, and I think Miami will be interesting next week. I don't know if they got an update. I think they said in commentary they bought the update this weekend, which gave them 2 tenths, and then they've got another 2 tenths for later in the season, sort of the second half or 2/3 into the season. I think it still feels to me like a very transitional year for McLaren as they prepare for that wind tunnel opening in June and everything they're working on for next year. It really does, because if they've got 2 tenths now and then an update in a few months' time that's another 2 tenths, and that's pretty much it, apart from little bits in between, that's not going to be a huge leap. They're still going to be in that mix because everyone else is going to bring time, aren't they? It's not just going to be McLaren developing, and I feel like I was expecting to hear a bit more excitement around it, like they found 0.4 of a second or a bit more than half a second, and that's a lot to ask in Formula One, but we'll see. We'll see for McLaren. I'm sure they'll be fine. Yuki Tsunoda, P10, Nick De Vries. Yeah, Sonoda DNF. Sonoda stuck behind that long-running Ocon and Hulkenberg queue that I was talking about for quite a good chunk of the race. Did finally get past on lap 46 for P11. Then, of course, when Ocon pitted at the end, he moved up into P10, 3.4 seconds off Norris. Really good weekend, mostly for Sonoda. So the one I'm thinking of is the stuff that really matters, because he wasn't really going to score points in the sprint, so who cares? But really good qualifying on Friday to get into P8, and then he's managed to get a point from that today. So I think he could be really happy with that for him. Just trying to think if I put any real interest in what happened in the sprint when he lost his tyre. I mean, it was amusing that his tyre was coming to his rescue.
The memes on Twitter have been brilliant after that.
He wasn't going to score points, was he? So does it really matter? I suppose it does. It's contact, isn't it? It's an accident. He's lost his tyre, but still, it's P10 today. Chuff for him. 2 weekends in a row, points as well for AlphaTauri. So good stuff. Nick de Vries, miserable weekend, really, quite frankly. Hit the wall in qualifying, and did he hit the... No, that was practice, wasn't it? Hit the wall, or was it qualifying?
Buried
it in the barrier.
Qualifying, Q1. Q1, yeah.
Mate, I'm so lost. Qualifying, hit the wall, and then today hit the wall on the inside at turn 5, damaged the left front, game over, retired, and that brought out the safety car and spiced up the early part of the race for us. So I guess thanks, Nick, for that. But definitely a weekend better best forgotten for the Freeze. Sonoda, though, like I say, I've been impressed with him this weekend, and actually I think he might have surprised a few people the last couple of weekends. He's come on nicely as Sonoda since that crash kid, if you want to call him that, in the early stages of last season.
Yeah, so Sonoda needs a good year this year.
Was it 21? Sorry, no, it was 21, wasn't it? The crash kid thing, not last season.
Yes, yeah, it was 20. But yeah, 22 though still wasn't a particularly brilliant year for Yuki. But I feel like this year he's finally started to turn it around, which is great, and which he needs to do, given the amount of Red Bull juniors you've got in F2 at the moment, and Liam Lawson in Super Formula keeping an eye on things as well. What I love with AlphaTauri is that they are so irrelevant at this stage that the reason Sonoda went into the wall at the in the sprint was because he collided with de Vries. That's how he damaged his front wing.
Oh, I missed that.
But yeah, it was never shown on the live feed. It was never shown on the live feed at all. I can't remember where maybe I dreamt that up. Now I say that, but no, I'm pretty confident I read that somewhere in an Autosport article or something. But the reason he damaged his front wing was because he made contact with de Vries on the first lap. Don't know whose fault that was, because obviously we never saw it. And that's why he didn't have the downforce to turn the corner, and why it looked like a bit of an embarrassing incident when he sort of just forgot how a corner works and drove straight into a wall. But yeah, he at least has turned it around and had a really positive race as well, which was great. De Vries, and I know I mentioned it earlier. I mean, I wasn't particularly excited with him coming into the season, but you know, my expectations were rock bottom, yet somehow he's managed to still defy those with how underwhelming he's been. I don't see him lasting particularly long if this is the way he keeps going. And I know the car doesn't help either, with it not being the quickest thing on the grid at the moment. But yeah, it's just been rough, and it's just been clumsy mistakes as well. Obviously, he had that crash in normal qualifying, and in sprint qualifying, he very nearly did the same thing, though this time had the sense to go down the escape road. And then just a couple of corners later in the race, just clipping that inside barrier and damaging the suspension. So one definitely to forget. And with another sprint race coming up in Miami, you'd like to think sprint races in de Vries, it's where he's supposedly very good, given his Formula E experience and his accolades in that category. But it's just not been brilliant at all. I know that I've been pretty harsh there. I think the comments are saying the same thing, but yeah, I need to see more from him from a Formula One driver.
Officially, it's his rookie season. People don't like that, but officially it is his rookie season. But he's not what we could call a conventional rookie. He's a very experienced driver, and I think you said it earlier with Formula E races. He's raced on street tracks. That's where he won his championship. you think this would be where he comes alive, wouldn't you? But it's just not worked from this weekend. Thank you to Stefan, by the way, channel member, for your super chat. Says, late to the party, could this high concentration of street tracks in the first half of the season just be front-loading Perez's points? Just feel like second half of the season, Max runs away with it. It's a fair point, to be fair, Stefan. I've not got the calendar in front of me. I can have a quick look, seeing as you've paired to ask me a question. Don't know what that was and why that happened, but it did. Yeah, Saudi Arabia, Australia is really a street track, isn't it? Azerbaijan, Miami, Monaco, Canada, and then there's no street track until Singapore. And then is that it till Vegas? Yeah, no, it's a very good point, actually. So maybe Checo, but then at the same time, at least he's taking advantage of his strengths. He's doing what he needs to do at those tracks where he knows he's going to be good or suspects he'll be good. So it's a very good point, actually, Stefan. Yeah, well, maybe that's something we'll try and remember, like we did for the predictions last year that I think it was Bill made that caught us all off guard. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on that one. Good point. David, this is David in Mandarin, that's his full name, says, after this race, it is clear that only Checo can compete with Verstappen. Alonso should only go for a far distant third. And also says, did you guys talk about what happened to Ferrari after the car? I can't think what you mean. Let me know what you mean. I'm not sure on that one. And Chevron McBean, thank you for your super chat, says, if De Vries continues to struggle like this, any FE driver can kiss their chance of getting to F1. Goodbye. Ooh, big hot take. Yeah, I'm not a big FE follower, as I was pointing out yesterday, and that's why I stopped my Formula E channel, because I just could not get into it. So thank you, Chevron. Appreciate that. It's something to think about, certainly, for the future. Where do we get up to? Back to the running order. We'll do some more questions shortly. Albon, P12, and Sargent, P16. Good weekend for Williams. Not points, obviously, but 12th place isn't bad for Albon at all. Really good qualifying on Friday. Certainly his side of the garage had a good one. Sargent, obviously his crash wasn't great in sprint qualifying or whatever they're calling it. But I think pace-wise for much of the weekend was solid. Sargent, I would say. Not blowing me away, but I don't think as bad as a lot of people predicted. Having said that, he was quite a way off his teammate in the end. A good 12 seconds. No, it's more than that. No, 12 seconds. 12 seconds off his teammate. So that's a lie. No, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Sorry, completely looking at the wrong thing. It was 88. Oh, no. It was 12. I was right. I need to stop doubting myself, Will. I've got to stop doing it. My maths is better than I think it is. So, yes, good weekend for Williams, but probably a team that needed classic bonkers Baku drama if they were going to score points today.
Yeah, they got the most out of their weekend. I think it's important to note Sargent getting through to Q2 in both sessions.
Yeah.
Technically not the sprint quali one. Well, he did, but he pinned it in the wall and didn't help him. But it's progress. And that's the first time he's made it into Q2 as well, from memory. And that means all 20 drivers have made it into Q2 this year, which is, don't know whether that happened last year. I can't remember the last time that did happen. So, I think I've not really got much to add really for Williams. It was it was a very quiet weekend for them, and besides obviously Sargent hitting the wall, but Albon nearly got points in the sprint. I think he was just shuffled out by Stroll at the end, and I think that the Williams car does suit the Baku circuit with its straight line speed, but it just wasn't enough, unfortunately. And yeah, I think at the end of the day they got the most out of it that they could have done. It would have taken, a crazy Baku race, which we sadly didn't get. So, yeah, it is what it is. I guess, they can just sort of look forwards, take the positive momentum onto Miami.
I did put in my notes, question mark, that he may have triggered the first stops in the midfield because Bottas pitted, and I think Albon came in a lap later, and I think that kind of forced a few people to react ahead. So, I mean, if that's correct, in fact, I'll tell you what, I'll see if the press release, and it might say, if that is correct, it looks as though Williams have tried everything. Thank you very much, by the way, to, is it Yori? 1234 for becoming a patron over on Patreon. Obviously, thank you very much for your support there, and thank you to Oliver as well. Oliver I yesterday, who also joined up on Patreon. Really appreciate your support, so thank you so much. All patrons, of course, thank you for your support. You are very much doing your bit in keeping this channel going at the moment. Let's see what Albon said. Damage on front wing for most of the race following contact with the McLaren, so there was a lot of management to do. Tricky trying to keep the Haas behind me while staying close to Oscar. Not a lot of room for overtaking. Shortened DRS, which I think has definitely impacted this weekend. Unfortunately, needed to maximise the weekend. Definitely have more to find with the car. Not an awful lot there. And Logan Sargent, all things considered, I learned a lot this weekend in the race today. We got a bit unlucky with the safety car timing at the start and fell into a bit of a lonely, frustrating race. Stuck behind Joe for most of it. By the time we got past, too late and too far disconnected from the pack ahead. So it says the car felt good, though, once he got into clear air. So that's a good thing for Sargent. But there's a little bit there as to what was going on with Williams. I'm trying to think where we're up to now because I don't think there's an awful lot to say about these next few, unfortunately, but we'll go for it anyway. Haas, Magnussen, contact with Piastri. Was it Piastri on that one? It was certainly a McLaren. No, an Alfa, sorry. Went into the back of Bottas's Alfa after Bottas had he got squeezed on the exit of, I think it was turn 2, and then he sort of backed off so he doesn't end up in the wall because he's not really got anywhere to go at that point, and then Magnussen kind of tags the back of him and damages his front wing. So that obviously compromised both of their races at that point. Not that really Bottas had the pace. We'll get to him in a minute to do much else with that one, given everything else he had going on. But yeah, front wing damage for the lap 1 turn 1 incident with Bottas for Magnussen. Nico Hulkenberg started from the pit lane because there wasn't enough practice this weekend. So the team decided to make a load of changes outside of Parc Fermé or brake part Fermé, make a load of setup changes. He ended up in the pit lane for the start. Started on the hide tyre and the hard tyre, and then went pretty much the whole race. And he was behind Ocon in that really long train because, of course, when the safety car came out, people pitted. Hulkenberg and Ocon jumped them, and then Ocon and Hulkenberg jumped them, and that kind of gave us that big train in the midfield. I guess for Hulkenberg, they gambled on. He tapped the wall as well, by the way, on turn 15 on lap 24, but no damage. But they gambled Haas on a safety car or red flag. They didn't happen. There'll be some people who think maybe with a few laps to go, he should have a few laps earlier come in and at least given himself a chance to come back through the field on some faster tyres. But I kind of feel like when you're in Hulkenberg's position there, having already committed to that gambling on a safety car red flag strategy, you've got to see that through. There's not really a lot of point coming in with 10 laps to go, putting the mediums on and trying to come back through, especially with the field so bunched up in a DRS train, because you're probably not going to get back through the field. And then if you have decided to do that, and then with 3 laps to go we get a red flag, you look foolish, don't you? You know, why didn't you stick to that strategy? So I think right thing to do from Haas to stick to that with Hulkenberg. And I guess thank you to Haas and Alpine for giving us that big midfield gaggle and keeping it a little bit interesting back there. Harsh, but fair.
Sorry, you cut out there for a second. Who are we talking about again?
The Hulken Magnussen.
Ah, right, yeah. I'm trying to remember what they did. I think every now and then we saw Hulkenberg career in or come very close to careering into a barrier. But yeah, they sort of kept us on our toes. I feel like every now and then we saw that brief yellow flag of hope symbol appear in the top left of our screen, and we thought, oh, maybe. No, never mind. It's just Magnussen running wide again. Came back in a bit of a difficult weekend, didn't he? His car shut off in FP1, and then he had the issue in qualifying, which put him out of Q1. So yeah, is it worth talking whether you've mentioned it before, any of the other build-up material, that there's this headline going around that Gunther's given Magnussen 5 races to sort out his F1 career. I'm not completely clued up on where it's come from. I've heard some people say that it's a little bit of hot air and it's been misquoted a little bit, but I do find it interesting. Hulkenberg and Magnussen, neither of them have particularly shone so far. I don't think they've just sort of been floating around doing their own thing. And equally, I don't know who. Again, we're going back to 2024 driver transfers, which shows how interesting this Grand Prix has been. But yeah, just it was just a bit of an odd headline that I think I caught at this stage in the season, since we're so early in. But I don't know whether you had any thoughts on that one.
That's the first I've heard of it, honestly. I've never heard, and nonsense. I know Steiner can be a little bit a little bit. I was going to say impatient, but I mean, how long did he stick with Grosjean and co? You know, he's not that impatient.
Like 5 years.
I don't think Magnus has had a particularly terrible start to the season. I think unlucky today to be behind Bottas and then Bottas to sort of back out of it and him hit him. There's not a lot he could do in that situation. And, you know, lap 1 damage seems to be a Kevin Magnussen thing now. Doesn't that surprise he's not had more meatball flags? And Hulkenberg's done an okay job coming back into Formula One. He's got 6 points on the board. So he's like, in fact, where do those 6 points come from for Hulkenberg? So 6 points in Australia. So not a terrible start to the season. He's out-qualified Magnussen at least 3, possibly 4 times, I believe. So I think Hulkenberg's done okay, but I'd be surprised if Gunther Steiner has seen 3 or 4 races and gone, right, K-Mag, sort yourself out, you're out. I'd be very surprised if that's... Where did you see the quote from?
It originally came from a Perspective F1 video that he found it. He didn't give the publication, I don't think.
Okay.
But he made an entire video on it, and I thought, oh, okay, that's a bit out there. I've not seen that one. But, yeah, there you go.
No, I'd be surprised if there's anything in that. Honestly, you never know in Formula One. Stranger things have happened, but I'd be surprised. It's like kind of like you said about De Vries and other drivers. It has only been 4 races now, and that quote must have been from 3 races. So it seems a bit crazy, but the whisperings around F1, they're always there, aren't they? You never know what's going to happen to surprise you. But yeah, not great from Haas, really. This weekend overall, Pierre Gasly 14th, Ocon 15th. So Gasly only 6.4 seconds clear of Ocon, who started from the pit lane, but he did pit one more time, did Pierre Gasly. So pretty miserable weekend for Alpine. I think it's fair to say. Car on fire for Gasly, and then Gasly was like, thanks guys, really appreciate you fixing the car. By the way, just crashed it. Can you do it again? So not a great one for him. Ocon taking out a Parc Ferme. He started from the pit lane so they can make setup changes and other things. And again, like I said about Hulkenberg, committed to relying on a red flag or safety car. Right thing to do in that situation. Stay out as long as you can. I guess the most dramatic part of Ocon's day was coming in to make his pit stop. Very, ridiculous circumstances. So if you didn't see it, he went to pit on the last lap, or on the penultimate lap. But all the photographers and Red Bull team personnel and others were all heading to the pit wall and gathering in Parc Ferme. And as he came round to, in that, by the way, very fast pit entry, he comes flying in there, comes to the speed limit line, and there's photographers across the pit lane entry, just the other side near Parc Ferme. And all right, nothing happened and everyone was fine. But what if he comes in there too hot and has a double lockup, or his brakes fail on the way in? It's a lot of ifs and buts there. But what if that happens? You've got a horrific incident going on there. So the FIA absolutely need to look at that, and the FIA are looking at that. A representative of the FIA responsible for the Parc Ferme area at pit entry is required to report to the stewards at 17:30 in relation to the incident below. Personnel blocking the fast lane in the pit lane on the final lap of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix while the pit lane remained open. Commentary could see it coming, and they don't always see a lot coming. I could see it coming, and I don't often see a lot coming. Why have race control not seen that? Absolutely ludicrous situation. I need to stop saying ludicrous because I immediately think of the IT crowd. Did you see that ludicrous display last night? But sorry, really random moment there. But I did see Jonty shared a tweet earlier. Yes, I went on Twitter to share a video and spotted it. Let's have a look.
Was it the onboard one?
No, there's one from a photographer. So here we go. So he shared a tweet from Brit Takes Pics, and she says, sports, they say, sports event photographer here, the officials, etc. will tell you where and when you can go, so onus is technically on them, but media should also be aware of where the athletes are, stroke the action is, and be following enough to be aware a driver hasn't entered the pits, especially if that's your bag, basically, if that's what you're doing. That is your job. So on the FIA officially, but photographers and everybody else probably or absolutely should be keeping on top of things a bit better there. An absolutely ridiculous situation. I'll let you have your say on it, actually, Will, while I go and find this onboard you've just mentioned, because I'm intrigued now.
Yes, there is an onboard of Ocon. It's circulating around Twitter. I might have retweeted it. Yeah, there you go. It's well, just so stupid. I guess I had no words. I heard Sky sort of going on about it when we were still watching the on-track action. I said, "Oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's just them trying to wake everybody up." And then I sort of thought, "Oh, actually, no, hang on. It is. They're not joking. It is actually quite a serious thing." And I think they were just about to put across, I don't know what the name of them is, but you see them in airports, those sort of cord barriers that you pull across to partition things out. They were literally about to pull that across and effectively clothesline Esteban Ocon as he came into the pits.
I should laugh, but yeah. like a bloody Acme cartoon. Wacky races. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
Sorry, it's the image. I wish I'd used that in my video now. That's really annoying. It's just the image of that in my head that's stuck there now. Oh boy. Yeah. It's. I mean, someone's losing their job over it. I'm sure it wasn't on this mistake on their part. It wouldn't shock me if this is something that has become the norm, because we very rarely see cars come into pit on the final lap, because why would you? So it wouldn't shock me if this is something that's been the norm for a while, and the rules were already in place to stop this happening, and it's kind of just been slowly let slip, and no one's noticed it, obviously, until now. So yeah, just a very, very weird situation, if I'm honest. And as I said, someone's getting in a lot of trouble for it. I'm glad I'm not that person, that FIA representative who's got to face Stefano Domenicali's shotgun now. But yeah, just a very, very weird situation. But it at least gave us something to talk about, I guess.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying, kind of complacency creeping in kind of thing. But complacency for me, in that situation, that is just so stupid. If the track is live and the pit lane is still live, I mean, just wait. I know photographers want to get their pictures, but look how slow they drive the in-lap after a race. Can they not just... People are going to say, look, we're overreacting to one situation, one incident, and all these years it's not been a problem. The thing is, not overreacting, but you have to say something about it, because if this happens again in 3 years' time and everyone's like, does nothing about it, and no one kicks up a fuss, and then somebody gets injured or worse... It's, why didn't you say anything after Azerbaijan 2023? And yeah, something should have been done there. The FIA, though, they'll look into it. I don't know if there's been a decision on it. It might be something that they have to. Oh, no, there is. Part Ferme decision. What have they done? So they've sacked Domenicali. They've sacked... he's not even part of the FIA. I know that, but why not? So the fact, as they've called it, is persons blocking the fast lane and the pit lane on the final lap of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix while the pit lane remained open in breach of Article 12.2.1.h and Article 12.3.1 of the International Sporting Code. That's the ISC, just in case I've read it again. Stewards heard from FIA rep... Do you know how much I love the FIA investigating the FIA? Oh, it's always funny. The stewards heard from the FIA representatives and determined that the relevant representatives took steps to set up the Parc Ferme area and also permitted media and other personnel to gather in the start of the pit lane and the pit wall during the last lap of the race while the pit lane was open and before the final stop of Ocon. Noted it was not unusual... Don't sing. For the representatives to allow such persons into the pit lane just before the end of the race. However, in this case, there was one driver that had to pit in on the last lap, and this created a very dangerous situation for those that were in the pit lane at the time. Considered it was... Oh, no, that's fine. We considered that it was fortunate that there were no serious consequences on account of what happened today. We stress the requirements of ensuring a safe and orderly event are paramount. This was acknowledged by the FIA team. We walked through the relevant procedures and protocol with the FIA representatives in detail and required them to take immediate steps to reconsider these procedures and protocols with the relevant stakeholders, so that's FOM, FIA and the teams, to ensure the situation does not occur again. FIA representatives expressed their regret at what happened and assured us that they would do so in time for the next event. So... yeah,
kind of sounds exactly like what I was saying then. It's something that has happened in the past, and they use the word "it's not unusual." It sounds like they've just got a little bit complacent over it, and now it's caught them out. They're like, "Oh, actually, yeah, we probably shouldn't have been doing that. Whoops." And it happened. Yeah, that sort of thing happens everywhere in life. It's just you always kind of you try to cut corners where you can, and it's going to come back to bite them on the arse this time round, hasn't it?
Gingerfest, thank you for your super chat. Says this happened in Australia a year or two ago. Was it Albon? Did it happen with Albon last year when he pitted late? Maybe I don't recall that.
I don't remember reading anything about it, but you did have Albon coming on the final lap. In 20, yeah.
Not a dig at you, mate. Will doesn't read, but we don't always get the facts, do we? After a race.
Oh yeah, no.
With Albon,
I agree. Yeah, it was 2022, wasn't it?
Yeah, with Albon last year.
Yes.
So they were complacent about it, and then they got caught out last year, so they've done nothing about it since. People. Anyway, most important thing, everyone was fine. But to me, the obvious answer there is that you don't come out until either A, everyone has made their scheduled pit stop, or B, probably more importantly, when the pit lane is the race is no longer live and everyone's sort of over the line and it's done. Because you've got probably a good few minutes before Sergio Perez, and you can all queue in like the FIA garage at the end or something, but you just don't go into the pit lane itself proper, and then you leg it to Parc Fermé when cars are on their in-lap to the pits. But I don't know if there are reasons they can't do that, or there's a bit too much common sense involved there. I don't know. But Valtteri Bottas, 18th place for Alfa Romeo. Zhou Guanyu ended up DNFing. He had a car issue, told to box and retired on lap 37. And Valtteri Bottas pitted 702,000 times, it felt like. It was actually only 3 in the end. P18 obviously hit at the start by Kevin Magnussen. Nowhere to go, like I say, for him. He had to back out of it, otherwise it was going to be an even bigger incident. And in their press release, what has Bottas said? Wasn't a great race for us, and we were never in the mix for points. We need to understand what happened, and most importantly, how to get back to being competitive. My race was hard from the start. Contact at turn 2. Basically what I said there, had nowhere to go, had to back out of it. Left him with a little bit of damage. Long race after that. Need to find a way back. Not really much in there. And then Zhou Guanyu, again, didn't have a chance to score points. Needed to retire the car as a precaution, as we had rising temperatures and alarms on my dashboard. In general, it was a tough weekend for all of us, and a tough weekend for me when it comes to my predictions. My God, I mean, what did I say? Sorry, I know this really doesn't matter. I have to make the point, just because I know for a fact I picked Alfa Romeo for double points, so it is related to Alfa Romeo. But my predictions in the preview, this is why you don't listen to John's predictions, were Verstappen for pole, Verstappen for shootout P1, Verstappen for sprint win, Verstappen for race win, podium of Perez and Hamilton, fastest at Verstappen, and best of the rest Alpine. I could not have got that any more wrong if I tried, could I? Yeah, so Alfa Romeo, mate, anything you want to add on them before we roll on to drive of the day and all that juicy good stuff?
I mean, they were an absolute mess. I guess that's the only thing I can really add. I wonder if Bottas picked up damage from the turn 1 clash with Magnussen, potentially. But, just another disappointing race for Bottas. I think I said this in the Australia reaction that we did a few weeks ago. He's not having a very good season so far. He's been behind Zhou for a lot of it, or Zhou's been on pace with him. And he just doesn't seem happy with the car this year. Something has changed from last year's Alfa Romeo to this year's Alfa Romeo, and he doesn't like it. And I wonder how much more of it the team will take, in all honesty. But, just a very uncharacteristic start of the season for Bottas, after he seemed to be getting he seems off track to be a lot happier, but on track just isn't getting the results at the moment. And yeah, it's a little bit concerning.
Bit of a weird one, Alfa, aren't they, this season? I kind of felt a little bit last season as well. I mean, it started so well and then fell away. But this year, good weekend in Bahrain, scored points, 8th place. Decent weekend in Australia, scored points, and 11th place as well, so nearly double points there. But then Saudi, not a million miles away from points with one driver in 13th, but then an 18th place. And then this weekend, a bit disappointing again. So a bit up and down, but in some ways I feel that's kind of that team goes through these phases, doesn't it? But yeah, that's the run through. So because there's not much point in saying much more. If you've got any questions, then please do pop them in chats shortly, and we'll answer anything regarding the race and anything else you want to talk about. But first of all, driver of the day. Officially, Sergio Perez got the driver of the day. One surname in chat. Who have you got? I'll read it throughout. I'll read a few out. Will, who have you got for your doctor? I need a better acronym than that. That was terrible.
You did. My driver of the day is going to be the person who created the race highlights package. How they have got 7 minutes and 20 seconds out of that is phenomenal. So fair play to you.
I think that's reasonable. They didn't really drive though. Maybe they're computer drivers. Maybe.
Yes. There you go. Answered it for me. As a serious driver of the day, Perez, I guess, is the obvious candidate, isn't he? Driver of the weekend, I've got to say Leclerc. But Perez did a phenomenal job, held off Verstappen, and fully deserved that win.
Yeah, I don't think Perez is a bad shout. In fact, it's probably again the most obvious shout there. Good point on Leclerc as well. I think Alonso's got to be in the mix for his thinking, his driving, his opportunistic move on Carlos Sainz. Again, radioing back to the team, tell Stroll this and do that, and let's work together. I think he's been very strong this weekend. So, Perez is probably the obvious answer. I'm going to go Alonso just to keep it interesting, because you've sort of said Perez and it looks like chat are going largely for Perez as well. So I'll say Alonso just to make that interesting. But Perez, absolutely fantastic drive today. Even without the safety car assistance, let's say, the safety car timing assistance, I still think he's not a million miles away from his teammate today. I think we would have had quite a good fight. This is very much a Checo circuit, isn't it? He does like this one. So yeah, I'll go Perez. Ayinka says Perez. Nick has gone with Perez. Stefan says Perez as well. Matthew says Alonso. Robert has gone with Perez. Josh says Alonso. Is it Gurgley's Technic Models says Leclerc. Bert Mylander says James. He wasn't out for long enough today to get that one. Platilobium says driver of the day Perez, but Yuki is a close second. Yeah, Yuki had a good day. Good day for Yuki today. Godahaldo Perez says Alonso. Sassy Lemon Cake, do like lemon cake, says Norris. Henry says Norris's move was the only thing that stopped me falling asleep. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, Perez for Valentina as well. Yuki for the one and only. And we'll do another one if any more come through. Conversation going on there that I'm not going to get involved in. Not today. But I think, yeah, that's it. Let me know your driver of the day in the comments later as well. If you're watching this a bit later in the day or tomorrow or whenever it will be. Yeah, if you've got any questions then, please do start to throw them our way and we will answer them, ideally related to the race. But to be honest, if you want to do it the whole weekend, that is absolutely fine. Before we get on to any of that, though, I do want to just do this channel update thing that I mentioned. Then we will get to the other good stuff, because I do want to talk about this. I talked about it yesterday. Some of you will have been here, so you know what's coming. But I want to give every opportunity for people to have their say. So I am floating the possibility of moving the live race reaction to a Monday evening after the race, probably renaming it as well as the debrief, but doing it live instead of a video. The reasons for that were or are very simple. It would allow me time to gather post-race press releases, interviews and information. I get the chance to watch the race back as well, so I can make more comprehensive notes, analyse major moments in the race and form a better opinion. Basically make a more informed stream for everybody. It'll allow me to find some new guests. I'm not attacking Will here. Love having Will on, but find some new guests to join me for a chat, because it is getting harder to find guests now that some of the regulars have decided to have lives. I mean, bastards, how dare they? Perhaps even some journalists. I said yesterday, I've spoken to a couple who'll be interested, but they can't do after a race on a Sunday, so they could do a Monday, so that's a possibility. It would also give me time to prepare the stream a bit more, so more relevant photos to what we're talking about. The FIA might have published a race result by then. I wouldn't be competing as well with the F1 post-race stream, Ted's notebook, bigger streams and podcasts, and they'd also be on a more consistent time. So the example I gave yesterday was 7 o'clock UK time. They'd be on every Monday after a race weekend at 7 p.m, not 3 p.m. one weekend, 9 a.m. another weekend, 11 p.m. another weekend. It would just be a bit more consistent, so I think that would help a lot. On a personal level, me being selfish, it would also allow me to enjoy the race on a Sunday without having to worry about taking notes and getting these streams ready, because first and foremost, I am a fan, and that is the most important thing. If I'm not enjoying it, then there's no point doing this anymore. So that's something I want to do. And it would also, I'd maybe look at the possibility of doing a pre-race look ahead on a Sunday morning instead. So there's still a stream on a Sunday on race day, but it'd be a look ahead instead of a review, and then we'd do the reaction or whatever it's called on the Monday. So that's the good. There are some negatives to it though. It would mean dropping the raw reaction, and the reason that's a negative is because that's something we've been doing since Brazil 2017. So I'd be sad to see that go, and I think a lot of you would, but I feel like these have almost run their course, especially with this season already for some people petering out and interest dropping. Maybe it's time to look at spicing things up or doing something a little bit different. There is also the concern that some fans may have lost interest by Monday night, but I think, as I've just said, a few people have already lost interest by Sunday afternoon, so especially on a sprint weekend, so I don't think that's going to be a massive deal. But the reason, a lot of you said it yesterday, you need to do what's right for you and do what's right for your channel. I really appreciate that. I honestly do. But with something like this, something that has been a staple of the channel for so long, I think you guys definitely need to make the decision. You need to be the ones to have your say. So you can let me know what you're thinking in the chat now. Nothing has been decided at all, and probably for Miami, things will stay as they are. It might not be until Imola, if anything's going to change, that it will change. But let me know what you think. Nothing's been decided, and I will put a poll as well in the community section tomorrow morning with a little post and a link to this bit of the video, a timestamp to this part of this stream, and then you can vote on that, and whatever you decide, even if it's a Brexit vote, will be what we go with. So let me know what you're thinking. It's down to you. It's as simple as that. So yeah, that was the channel update thing. So now that's done, sprints. Sprint races, sprint race weekends, sprint race formats. I need a quick drink, Will. What did you make of it this weekend? The tweaks that we've seen. I've got. I mean, I'll tell you what. I'll ask you first. Actually, Will. I don't know what the etiquette is for being online. Are you allowed to change an opinion online? Is that allowed? Ooh. Is that in the rules?
I don't know. I mean, you're asking the wrong person. I online rules is something that I typically don't tend to follow. But
I've noticed, yeah.
I mean, look, coming from a perspective of someone who likes sprint races as they were, I like them even more now. At the end of the day, the reason I like sprint races, mainly, if you boil it down to its core essentials, is would I rather see a race or a practice session? And the answer to that is always going to be a race. Would I now rather see an extra qualifying session instead of a practice session, and even less practice as well, which theoretically should throw the weekend into a little bit more of an unknown? Also, yes. So I'm happy with the changes. I didn't particularly. I like sprints beforehand. So yeah, maybe I'm the wrong person to ask on this, but okay, fine. We didn't get the most exciting race, but equally we don't get the most exciting Grand Prix each time. So I don't think we need to completely write off the format right here and now. give it a couple of attempts, see if it works. The race distance is the only thing. I know they won't make it any longer than it currently is, because there's already kind of risks on mileage and potential for damage and things, but they need a way to add an extra layer of strategy in there, especially now if they're making them standalone events and they can sort of play around with it a little bit more. I think it's time to see if they can add some level of strategy. I don't know how they would do that, but yeah, I wonder if there's something that you can add there. They also just need to fix the rule with tires in qualifying. That was what I loved was that Norris could have gone out on a set of intermediates or full wets.
Don't. I was raging.
And part of me kind of wished he did, because can you imagine? Was it Tsunoda was the other car that would have been in that situation had he got into Q or SQ3? And it would have been hilarious to see both of those battle it out for 9th place on full wet tires. I mean, it sounds like something out of an F1 game, to be honest.
Wacky races again.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like I said, I personally enjoyed having the quality session and sprint on the same day. It was quite a nice little mix up for me. It was quite cool to wake up early in the morning. If we got an early FP2, I usually won't watch it. I'll say, you know what, I'll take the extra couple of hours in bed. But it was nice to sort of have that and then have the race immediately follow on. It was quite cool. Okay, fine, it wasn't the most exciting race or qualifying session, at the end of the day. But add a few tweaks. Again, I don't know what those tweaks are, so I'm not being helpful here. But add a few tweaks and I think it could work.
So on Tuesday, I said, much to people's disgust, that the sprints are fine. That's how I view them. And I've said this so many times. If they disappear tomorrow, okay. If they keep them, okay. Honestly, I don't love them and I don't hate them. I don't think they're the abomination that some people think they are, and I don't think they're the greatest thing F1 has ever pulled out of their backside. I just don't have that view of the sprints. They're fine. They are what they are. But one thing I've always said is they need to be standalone events. And when they announced on Tuesday, I was really pleased to see them going for it and trying something new. And look, there's no denying that a qualifying session from a fan's perspective is always going to be better than a practice session. The thing is, practice, as I said yesterday, isn't for us fans, it's for the drivers. And if fans find it boring, and enough of them all say it's boring, and F1 listen to them, then stop televising it. I'd be gutted. I enjoy watching practice on in the background. I enjoy watching testing, but if fans are going to complain that testing and practice are boring and kick off at F1 about it, then just don't televise them and let the teams get on with it. Which won't go down well, but that's my view on that. And a qualifying session is better than practice is a good defence, but also a qualifying session is better than no session. So should we have 3 qualifying sessions on a Saturday? I mean, I'm up for that. Why not? But what really hit me yesterday when I sort of had time to reflect on the day was the lack of enthusiasm I had for a second qualifying session considerably less than 24 hours after the first one. It was a rerun of the first qualifying session, but shorter. And it didn't really get me excited. I wasn't thrilled. And it did actually feel a little bit like a practice session, to be fair, because drivers in the first 2 sessions went out there on tyres and just did lap after lap after lap after lap. So it kind of felt a little bit like practice anyway. But I didn't really get excited for that. And the sprint, early on, there was a bit of excitement. We had some overtaking. We had a pass for the lead. We had some contact and some drama. But then it petered out like sprints do, like today's race did in some ways, or in many ways, and it didn't really come to anything. And it kind of hit me yesterday that part of the reason for that, weirdly, despite how much I've banged on about these being standalone events, it's because from 11th place down, really, because top 8 are points, 9th and 10th are on the fringes of points. So from 11th place downwards, what was the point? At least in a Grand Prix, your position, if you finish 13th, means something, because that can, on countback, gain you a championship position. So at least that means something. Plus, we've been doing Grand Prix for so long that it's just accepted that, as it used to be, 6 teams or 6 drivers or 8 drivers or 10 drivers are going to score points. You kind of accept that. But with a sprint, it felt really anticlimactic, because once the leaders have sort of sorted themselves out. Your immediate response in a Grand Prix is, right, what's happening in the midfield? And to be honest, when I then went to look what was happening in the midfield, I didn't care because it didn't mean anything. It was irrelevant. It didn't matter for the grid. It didn't award points. It didn't matter for the championship. So I actually think, whilst I am happy they tried the standalone events, I don't think it's quite right still. And I wonder if I was just wrong, which I'm perfectly happy to say, and maybe it does need to count for something like grid positions, because if we have to keep them, they need to get them as right as possible and make them as interesting and as engaging as possible. And I don't find somebody driving around in 13th all that thrilling in a main Grand Prix. I certainly don't in a sprint race where it means literally nothing for anything. So I'm not sure how I feel about it. And I think maybe it does need to be deciding the grid for a Grand Prix on Sunday if that's what they're going to do. The other thing I would do if they don't want to do that and keep it standalone is I'd tweak it. I said this yesterday, FP1 on Friday morning, because I think having likes of Hulkenberg and Ocon taking their cars, or their team taking the cars out of Parc Fermé to work on setup, is a little bit ridiculous. So clearly they need more practice time. So 90-minute practice for FP1 on Friday morning, sprint qualifying on Friday afternoon, the sprint race on Saturday morning, normal qualifying Saturday afternoon, and the race on Sunday. Because then, and this is somebody else's suggestion in my comment section that I've stolen, so thank you very much for this, but it's a good idea, because then every single session as the weekend builds means more each time. So practice is practice, then sprint qualifying means a bit more, the sprint race means a bit more, qualifying means a lot more, the race means even more. So you kind of build that anticipation through the weekend. So that is the change I would make, and I'd award points down to 10th place. I don't know how they want to do that, but that's what I would do. But I'm not totally sold on this format, and I'm happy to say that I was wrong after 2 years of complaining they should be standalone. I didn't enjoy it. I enjoyed streaming and talking to this lot about it. It was a lot of fun streaming it, but it wasn't something that I'm going to be really excited. I mean, I'm not going to pan it off, because I'm basing this on a sample size of one, don't forget, on a track that is reliant on drama, on crashes, on safety cars and red flags to make it interesting sometimes. So maybe in Austria, where they can be a bit more racy, maybe it'll be better there, and maybe it'll feel better. So I'm not going to say change it all now and put it back to what it was. Let's see where we are sort of after we've had 2 or 3 of them, maybe by the summer break after Belgium, and then look at it again. Don't just change it because it hasn't really worked perfectly first weekend. You've got to give it a couple of weekends, because otherwise we just end up with rule changes all the time. So sorry for that long waffle there, but I just wasn't thrilled by it, and I hope Austria's better. But again, there are changes I've made, Will, but I wouldn't do it before Austria, because I want to see it again at a proper racetrack, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think we're not in a. I think everyone would agree that we're not at a stage where we fine-tuned it and we're happy with that, with the way it is. But I think it's promising that the FIA and the teams are willing to play around with the structure. I know I'm not even looking at the comments of the stream at the moment, but I know for a fact that there will be reverse grids, and I think I think a lot of us would love to see reverse grids, and I think that would be a really, really cool addition.
100%. Why can't they just try it, Will? Just once. Just try it one weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what we could do with? Sorry, Will. Do you know what we could really do with? We could do with a year where, like, I don't know, a pandemic or something hits, and we've got fewer races, and you could really try a few things out, really trial it, rather than messing about in a 23 race season. You could really do with something like that. I wonder if that'll ever happen or has ever happened. Wouldn't that be an idea?
I mean, I love that idea minus the pandemic bit.
I was going to say, don't want another pandemic, but my point is, why? And we said this. Me and Jonty said this a lot. And Stuart did as well. Why were they not trying these during 2020? I know things were chaotic, but why not? You know, there were only 16 races in 2020, something like that. So why not throw a couple of these sprints in there, try the reverses, try and get the format right, and then in 2021, when it's still a little bit all over the place, try them out then, and then we'd have something in place. Because it still seems crazy to me that the decision wasn't officially communicated until 3 days before the weekend started what the format would be, when you've had a 4-week spring break and the whole winter to make the decision. I won't start, I promise.
I mean, no, start away. But I mean, I see where you're coming from. And I'm trying to remember whether we were talking much about sprint races in 2020. It's all sort of a blur at that stage. Then we get to 2021 and think the less said about that year, the better. So, yeah, it's yeah. With hindsight, I think it's easy to say why don't we do these in 2020, but I honestly can't think back to. I think the plan for 2020 was let's just go racing. But they definitely were a little bit more lax on the rules. Like we were go, the whole idea of a world championship going to at least, was it 3 or 4 different continents? That idea was scrapped for the year, and the calendar was a little bit more fluid. But I wonder if sprints, maybe with all of that going on, might just not have been at the forefront of everyone's minds. And the plan was more, let's just get cars out on track and racing as we know. I wonder if it was that. But and perhaps, potentially, and again, I don't know this for a fact, but maybe it's a sense of the pandemic making everybody open to being a little bit more fluid with the rules and changing the calendar mid-year and things like that. Maybe that set up the situation where we're in now, where we can experiment a little bit more. So maybe thinking on the bright side with that one. Again, I might be speaking completely out my arse. I probably am on that one, but I don't know. That's how I'm trying to read into it anyway.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just when things are you've got races all over the place, it's chaotic anyway. Let's throw a sprint in during a year that matters because it crowned a world champion. Lewis Hamilton won that championship, but it's a year that a lot of people look at as a year where these could have been tried. Because I just feel like it's weird that we've had 7 of them now, and we're still umming and ahhing about what the best way to go is. But again, for anyone, I'll admit I was wrong on Tuesday and previously when I said they should be standalone. I'm not sure they are or should be, but if you keep them standalone, reverse the grids from qualifying. And I've seen a couple of people say it in chat as well. Having qualifying on a Friday afternoon is fine for me as a content creator. It's fine for people at the racetrack. It's fine for people who aren't working or whatever. But if you're at work or you're at school, you're missing that session. And if you rely on, say, Channel 4, for example, to get your highlights, you're not going to see qualifying. And it's such a vital session for the weekend that it really, for me, needs to be on a Saturday. The only thing I would say about the standalone event, and I'm stealing this from Twitter from somebody, who said at least with it being standalone and having all the sprint stuff on a Saturday, they could watch qualifying on a Friday and then come back on Sunday and not even acknowledge the sprints exist, which is fair enough, I guess. But just to reiterate the point to anyone who's taking what they want from that and picking it apart and coming up with their own, Sean said this when he didn't, I'm not anti-sprint, but I'm not somebody who is going to go crazy because, yay, it's sprint weekend, because that's just not me anyway, generally, to be honest. But certainly not for sprints. Let's see what you guys are saying in chat, and then we'll take some of your questions as well. Nick says reverse grid. So if someone starts from the pit lane, are they starting on pole? I think the pit lane start thing would still be pit lane start, but I do like that idea because then you just put your car in the pit lane, wouldn't you? I don't like the idea. I think it'd be funny once and then never to be done again. But you could reverse just the top 10. But I think if you reverse the whole grid, the drivers who are fighting for the championship will want to come through and fight for the points. And the drivers for Williams and Haas and who else? Alpha Tauri, if they're in the points, they're going to want to cling on to them because they could be their best chance to score points all weekend. And that maybe helps to counter the fact that positions, at the moment, 9 back don't count, but in my world, 11 back don't count. It would kind of offset that a little bit because your faster drivers would want to come through to score points in a tight championship fight or whatever. Or Tsunoda's going to want to cling on to that 4th place desperately because that would really help Alpha Tauri. I just think that would make things a bit more interesting. But I understand why people don't like reverse grids in Formula One. Actually, no, I don't, because the same people will tell me how great F2 is for reverse grids. So, well, then I suppose F2 cars can follow more easily. So would we end up with a situation where actually the faster cars get caught up behind the slower cars and just in a massive DRS train and can't go anywhere? That is one concern, I suppose. Tacitus says reverse grids make sense. Nick says modern F1 fans only want drama every minute of every weekend. Sad to see the world going this way. Fortunately, I'm not a modern F1 fan, mate. By the way, if it was up to me, the race weekends would stay as they were. FP1, FP2, FP3, quali in the race, because I'm just a miserable old man. Reverse grids is the one thing that all of the drivers seem to agree on. They don't want it, says Beth. Very good point. As already mentioned, the teams won't want it as well. Something to bear in mind. Delta's reverse grid during the last sprint of a season. That's basically decided already, like this one, likely this one. Elian says, I don't like important Friday sessions. I can't watch them when I'm at work, which is perfectly fine. I completely agree with that. It seems crazy to me. But FD30, my problem is the sprint literally played out the same as the race. I'm not complaining, but the cars are too reliable and the current grid is too good to have the unpredictability of 2 races a weekend. Interesting point. Matthew says, the new sprint format, is it time for reverse grid so as to give smaller teams a chance at fringe points? Mr. Bruce Curry, I assume Mr. Bruce is saying he likes the idea of my weekend format, so thank you very much. Nick suggested qualifying for qualifying. Why not? Raoul says, completely opposite take. Do sprint shenanigans on Fridays, do a practice on Saturday. Teams have data by then do a regular programming. No, it still gives you 3 days of action, doesn't it? It would be weird not starting from my point of view. It'd be weird not starting with a practice session, but yeah. Patrick says 300 kilometers. I'm surprised they didn't just go with half race distance, to be honest, Will, when they announced the sprints. I get why they didn't, engine mileage and that, but I'm surprised that wasn't brought up a bit more or pushed a bit more. And Frosty says, make sprint races worth money prizes, not for points. Who's the money going to? Yeah. The drivers. That might incentivize some of them to go for it. 10 grand, I'll do it.
I mean, I would. Whether Lewis Hamilton on 40 odd million a year might for 10k. I don't know.
Yeah, because otherwise he sat there in races going, nah, it's not worth my time. I'd do it for 10k. Yeah, keep your questions coming in your comments as well. We'll wrap up shortly because there's not a massive amount to talk about in that race unless we've missed something that you really want us to talk about. Please do drop a like as well. 141 likes so far, 415 still here. So let's try and get that up to 200. That would be absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. And I've been having a look, by the way, at your response to my proposal of moving, not my marriage proposal, my proposal of moving the streams to a Monday night. I have looked at them all. I'm keeping tabs. I'm doing screenshots as I go. So I'll bear all that in mind and see what you're saying. But I'll read a couple out just to gauge what people are saying. I did see a couple of saying just do what you want to do what's best for you. I totally get it. Carmen says, yeah, that sounds good for me. As long as there is a live, it is welcome changes. James says, do them. Sounds like a great idea. Stefan wants bonus tyre talk. If I do that, that's the trade-off. Joe says, often can't make it on a Sunday, so sounds perfect to me. These streams will be organised. That's unthinkable. We'll still be here, but I'll miss the chaos, says a Yinka. Absolutely, yeah. I'm not saying they'd be organised. I'm saying they'd be more informed. They'd definitely not be organised. So thank you for... I did see somebody say that they quite like going straight out of the race and into this. So, yeah. There'll be a mixed reaction to it when I put it out tomorrow, but we'll see what they say. I thought I'd put that to you. So, yes, thank you very much to a Yinka for your super chat. Says, I love this channel. Started with race watch-alongs in 2018, back when I don't have money to get a subscription or sense to find a stream online. Real quick, J in my name is pronounced as J. Other than that, you've nailed it. So a Jinka. Is that correct? A Jinka. So you know what I'm like with pronunciation. Thank you so much for your super chat. Really appreciate that one, mate. And for it's your first super chat according to YouTube as well. So extra celebration. Thank you for your support. Brenda says, do what's best for you, but I've personally always loved liked tuning in almost immediately after a race. It sounds like there are more advantages to a Monday evening, says Beth. If you've got any questions, let's bring it back to the race then. And we'll do 10 minutes, I think, of... What would that take us to? An hour and 45 for the stream. So, 10 minutes of... I can't count, Will. Be a bit more than an hour and 45, but whatever. Bring it back to the race. Have you spoke about the Ocon pit lane incident? Yes, we have, Waldo. We're not impressed with it. The FA have made a decision for anybody coming in. It's really not that big of a decision. Basically, don't do it again. They'll try and make sure it doesn't happen again, and they're sorry that it happened in the first place. It's kind of... Unless... Would you say that's a fair summary of that one, Will? Sorry, won't happen again.
I mean, yeah, I think we're just glad that, F1's attempt at Squid Game didn't quite work. So, I laugh, but, had Son actually been injured, it's a very serious thing, isn't it? So they got off lightly. I think this is sort of their big warning, and as long as they learn from it, then yeah, just move on really. Which
Yeah.
I know is something that's maybe difficult for F1 fans to do, but I mean me included. But uh, yeah, yeah, I've not got much more to say really on that.
There's something Squid Game coming on Netflix soon. I don't know what it is. Looks like a game or something, but there you go. Logan says that was me talking about enjoying coming straight to the reaction after the race. Says you could do a short reaction after the race, then do an informal debrief on Monday if that would work. I did consider that, Logan. The only thing is, I know, as he says it for the third time in a row, I love repeating myself. I get that. I do it all the time. It's frustrating for you. It's frustrating for me, but I don't really want to do a stream after a race because a short stream, it's all right saying a short stream, but the amount of times I say I'm going to go live for 40 minutes and 2 hours and 40 minutes later I'm still talking, it's crazy. So I don't really want to do a stream after a race and then effectively repeat everything on Monday night again. I think that's why I thought a pre-race and then the Monday evening would work better because I'm talking about the race coming up, predictions, have a bit of fun with that, and then on the Monday I'm talking about the race that's happened. So I'll take it all on board and make a decision from there. Is the Alfa Romeo the slowest car this year, says FD30? It's a good question. What is the slowest car? I think they're in there with AlphaTauri, I would say. Or is it... I mean, Tsunoda scored points 2 weekends on the bounce. Let's have a look.
Australia, though, that was gifted as a result
of
everybody exploding. So I
was 11th, though, wasn't he? So...
yeah.
I think...
Yeah, I think it's like we were talking about with the fight for second. It differs every race weekend, but I think right now, at the start of the season, I would have put it between Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri, and McLaren. I think McLaren have now got out of that little pack, so it's between Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri. It wouldn't shock me that if in a shock weekend Haas fall into that bracket, maybe McLaren might fall back into that bracket if we get to a track that really doesn't suit them. I don't think it's like we've had in the seasons past where there is a dedicated HRT or dedicated 2021 Haas that will be at the back of the field every single race, and we know won't make it through Q1, which is great. But this weekend, I think Alfa were up there with Alfa Romeo or AlphaTauri again. I'm gonna say AlphaTauri with the slowest car this weekend, and Tsunoda just drove well. I feel like Alfa Romeo were close, but Bottas was a bit more convincing at getting into Q2 than I say that Tsunoda got Q3, didn't he? So, I don't know. I don't know. It's one of the two, but. Should we just call them evenly matched and leave it at that? They're both crap. Let's go with that.
Well, Tsunoda's results this season are 11th, 10th, and 10th. So that doesn't scream to me that they've got the slowest car because when you look at, for example, Bottas has done 8th, 18th, 11th, and 18th. Zhou's done 16th, 13th, 9th, and retired. Just trying to look at the other teams, see who's had Williams haven't been exactly epic. I don't think they've got the slowest car. I think they are probably in that conversation, but I think they seem to have a really slippery car. But 10th in the first race, and then it's 16 retire, double DNF, 12, and then 16. So they're not... I know looking at results is a bit silly because there are reasons for those results sometimes. There could be something that wasn't their fault, a mechanical problem or whatever, but I'm just trying to look at very simplistically quickly, but I don't think Haas are as quick as people think they are. I don't think they're the slowest, but I don't think they're as quick as people think they are. Thank you, Chevron, for your super chat. Says, just test the idea at the next Grand Prix and poll us then. I'll keep Miami as it is for now, just because it's only next week, isn't it? But we have got a triple header coming up after that, so I could try some stuff in there. Nick says, do a sprint 30 minutes after the race, then a full stream on Monday night. do I need to qualify for the full stream and the sprint, or can I do those as one?
Alpha you get a bunch of guests on, and we can all compete over who gets the slot in the main Monday stream.
We'll do that one. Alpha got to be in the discussion for worst car. That's Alfa Romeo from Tacitus. And Nick's Fist says, which Alpha and Alpha? Oh, don't. I keep doing that. I've forgotten what I said now, Nick, so I'm sorry. I would say Alfa Romeo. Haas are not as quick as they look. I think Alfa Romeo are quicker than maybe they look. Williams are in the mix somewhere, and I think Alpha Tauri, I don't know how much of that is De Vries making the car look worse than it is. Or I could be positive and say Tsunoda's making it look better than it is. I could try the positivity for a change.
Sorry, I can't go over that De Vries comment. That was so harsh.
But it's sort of, we've sort of had this before with drivers, and it's like, oh no. People bang on all the time about how Fernando Alonso was basically driving a Caterham in 2012, when actually, I think Massa made that car look slower than it actually was. It wasn't the best car in 2012, not at all, but it wasn't exactly the 8th fastest or anything like that. It was a great achievement by Alonso in 2012 to keep himself in that fight and throw away a 40-point lead. But I don't think, after throwing away a 40-point lead, or whichever way you want to look at it, but I don't think that Ferrari was that bad. Massa kind of made it look a bit worse than it was. That's why I'm not trying to be horrible to De Vries, but is it his results that make it look worse than it actually is? If that makes sense. I know you love it when I get controversial like that.
Yeah, no, I see your point. I'm only taking the mic.
I know.
But yeah, I mean, I've been equally harsh with De Vries as well today, so I can't say anything. It was just the way you worded it before. I was just like, wow. Oh, but no, I completely agree, and I think it's an interesting thing back to 2012 as well with Massa. But let's not waffle down that avenue, otherwise we'll be here for forever.
Yeah, we absolutely would. Any more questions on the race before I say something else that I instantly regret saying? We did do an update. I think you were here for that, Casper. We did an update on the Ocon incident. Anything else? If not, we'll wrap it up. Or anything you want to ask us? Do you think Alonso is in the best form since 2013? I'm sure he's feeling 22. Right, Josh, get out. Out, Josh. I'm not having it. I'm sick of Crofty and his Taylor Swift references all weekend. You're grounded. I'm not having it, Josh. You're grounded. Oh, so, yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you. I was never, ever putting those two together. So I'll let myself out.
Yeah. Do you know what? You people that think dickhead is harsh, you wait to hear what Will gets after this. It's going to be worse than that. That's for sure. I'm not having it. Absolutely. Do you know what's funny though? I could probably name about 2 Taylor Swift songs and that's it. So that's probably all it is. I'm just angry that I can't come up with any decent ones. But yeah, you're grounded, Josh. Not you, Josh. The other Josh. There's 2 Joshes in chat. Josh Potts, not Josh Smith. I'm not having it. No, don't get me wrong. There's no bad blood or anything. But anyway, let's. Oh, no, get right. Stop on the end of the stream. That's it. It's over. Thank you very much, Will. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing Taylor Swift references.
It's been a pleasure to be part of the F1 Word channel.
Yeah, cheers, guys. Bye. Yeah, thank you very much, Will, mate. It has been great fun as always having you on. I'm sure we'll get to do some more over the course of the season. Hopefully some more a little bit more interesting than this one. But all in all, weekend was all right. Oh, hang on a second. Actually, better do the poll, aren't I? End it there. It's not going to be a massive surprise here. Azerbaijan Grand Prix, rate the race. 6% thought it was great. Okay. It's all about opinions. Good.
That's the Perez fans.
Good got 12%, bad got 40%, and average got 40%. Do you know what, actually? Between average and bad is probably about right. Wasn't the worst, but certainly wasn't great. So I think that's about right. 40% for each of those. Does that add up to 80, 92? So it still doesn't add up on YouTube, but there you go, yeah. 40% say average, 40% say bad. So I would say that's about right. But anyway, yes, thank you very much, Will. And I'm sure I'll talk to you shortly, mate.
Yeah, pleasure as always.
Awesome stuff. Thank you very much to Will, and thank you to all of you guys. That's it. That you're all grounded. I've had it. You're all grounded. Do you know what, actually, Purple Zebra? I quite like that one. Moving swiftly on. I like that. That was clever. But yeah, you're all grounded now. I'm not impressed. I'll see you next week. He looks disgustedly at the chat. Yes, thank you for joining me. For all the abuse I'm giving you, I still appreciate you being here. So thank you very much. I will be back, if not before, on Thursday with the Miami Grand Prix. So I'm going to be listening to a lot of Will Smith Miami this week. Miami Grand Prix preview on Thursday. Obviously, of course, it's a reaction next week. I will be solo for that one because it is a super late one here in the UK. And it's always difficult to find somebody. So I will be live next Sunday on my own. Thank you very much to Nick for the super late super chat. Thank you very much, mate. Says thanks for the chat as always. Appreciate your support here and on Patreon as well, mate. So thank you very much for that one. Thank you as well to everyone for your support just lately. Things aren't great with the channel. I'm feeling better, which is a good thing, so that's positive. It does feel a little bit like it's dying on its arse at the moment, so not sure how long we'll be doing this for, but we're going to keep going until nobody's watching. So we'll keep trying our best here. So thank you very much to everyone for your support over the last week or so, or over the last few years as well. Absolutely. And I will see you on Thursday. In the meantime, though, please do follow me on social media. Don't forget to give me a like before you go. 164. Let's try and get that to 200. Probably a big ask with me ending the stream in just a moment. Only 320 here. So let's see if we can get that to 200. But as close as possible would be amazing. And don't forget to subscribe if you're new as well. So you don't miss out on any future content. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.